Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert on who I'm very excited to talk to. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Hi, my name is Karthik Lavangu. I've been in the US for the past 15 years now, and I would say I'm an expert on visas and immigration, having lived in the US for 15 years on like different visas. Yeah, that's me.
Excellent. Yeah, I have had a fair amount of experience, and I feel like I have a decent amount of knowledge about visas and immigration process. So my understanding is that going through and trying to get a visa, a lot of people focus on the idea that people have to demonstrate a special skill. And the thing that people jump to is somebody that's an engineer or a scientist or like a baseball player or something like that. But they also are looking for special skills in other ways. Like if you could be somebody who is an aerialist, like for Cirque du
hmm
Soleil, they could
Yeah.
definitely get in. And then also somebody that's double jointed in the United States. There's been a real drop in the number of people that have been double jointed. So people outside of the United States have been like, oh, this is a nice little loophole to try and fit through by being double jointed, trying to get in. And there's
What
been a
is what is double jointed? Like
Okay,
I've
so,
never heard of
yeah.
that.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. So being double jointed is when usually like a joint can only move like one way without like it being hurt. But then
hmm
people that are double jointed can basically get full range of motion in all of the joint without like causing damage to the joint. One of the big ways is like people that can look like they dislocate their shoulders, but actually they're
hmm
completely fine. In the most recent two administrations, they've been a big proponent of getting people that are double jointed just because of that huge drop in the number of people that have been double jointed in the United States. And then another thing people often overlook is that there's a lot of tests that are involved, and people think about that there's speaking tests, reading tests, writing
hmm
tests, but there's also tests that are kind of overlooked. For instance, there's the general trivia test. And so that's not necessarily anything that relates to the United States. That's actually them
hmm
asking you, back in the 90s, they would ask you about like what's happening on Seinfeld or on Friends and just see like, oh, are you following the shows correctly? And
Okay.
now it's a little bit more of like a vibe check and being like, okay,
hmm
are you familiar with the most popular YouTubers and TikTok influencers in the United States? What daytime talk shows are you watching? What game shows are you watching?
Mm.
Are you watching Jerry O'Connell's Pictionary, or are you a Jeopardy person? If you're a Jeopardy person, they want you in immediately. I can tell you that right now. We don't have enough people for Jeopardy
Yeah, you
these
don't have
days.
a host.
We don't. If you don't have a host, you can't decide who you're going to pick to be on the show, because that goes to the whole vibe check thing. Because if you have the consistent host, you can be like, okay, person will play well with this person. They definitely need people that are big proponents of Jeopardy. And then finally,
hmm
I think that one of the main things that people often don't study enough for is the recitation of the Animaniacs Capital song. People think like, oh, you need to
Okay.
have knowledge of the United States and the state capitals and stuff like that, but they don't think that they're actually going to be asked to do Wacko's America from
hmm
memory. And when they roll out the picture or the map of the United States and they give you the little pointer, now it's a laser pointer because it's the modern world, and they expect you to point to the general vicinity of all the state capitals, it can be very
hmm
daunting to people. And so I think that that's one thing that a lot of people overlook studying. Now, based on what you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say
Yeah.
was accurate?
How much of that would be accurate? I think you started really strong. You
Okay.
started really strong. And then it went in a direction where I was like, wow, I never thought about those things. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
very
I would say, I'm trying to think. I would give you like a solid 2 on 5.
2 out of 5. Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're very kind with that assessment. Yeah, tell me more about the process.
So I first came to the States on a student visa,
Okay.
and now I'm on a work visa. The thing you said about the tests,
Hmm.
yes, that happens. But I think based on what you see on like TV and movies, like the tests that happen, I think like, there are a couple of different kinds of tests. So when I came here for grad school, I had to actually take a test, okay, that is conducted by a third party, right?
Okay.
That basically tests your English, not just how you talk, but like how you comprehend all those different pieces of like basically trying to assess that like if this person is gonna make a fool of themselves in the US or they are capable to survive and like communicate and comprehend different scenarios and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Based on that, you have to submit these scores to the universities, and the bigger and the better the university is, the better scores you need. And there's like a grading system, right? You need to have like obviously top scores if you need to get into like some sort of like Ivy League or a liberal arts school on East Coast versus like a crappy university somewhere else.
Hmm.
So those are the kinds of tests. Other than obviously you have to take your GREs and GMATs and stuff like that from a different country. And then once you
Hmm.
get here on that visa, you have like a very like limited time, right? And you have to go to a consulate, a US consulate, wherever you are, or
Hmm.
the nearest consulate you can get to. And then they actually do an interview there, right? Like they'll ask you all sort of like these questions about like why are you going there. And mind you, like this is after they've already received all the documentation and they know exactly why you're planning to go there, right? Like
Hmm.
you got admitted into a school or you have a job lined up or whatever, but they still ask you those questions. And even if you have all the documentation and everything, but if that officer at the consulate thinks that you're not good enough, you could be rejected, right?
Well, I may have been a little bit off base with some of my assessment. It sounds kind of like at that point there is kind of somewhat of a vibe check of
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
that person. What I imagine is somebody like looking up over documents and like squinting, trying to like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, is that just way off base, or does that kind of sound accurate?
I mean, it depends on person to person, but like for example, in my case, right,
Hmm.
there's this guy who's looking at the documents, and he was basically, I think, like just trying to feel you out in the sense like, if you're like trustworthy enough to for me to let you in my country, kind of a thing that was going
Hmm.
on, and because I, also like at the same time, like a lot of if you're coming here for master's degree, it's like 2 years or maybe
Hmm.
three in some instances, and they'll ask you some questions like, hey, so what are you going to do after you finish your degree? And even though you want to work here and maybe build a life here, you're supposed to say, I'm going to go back to my home country. So that's a basic thing. If you don't say that, the chances of you actually getting in are pretty slim. So like
Oh.
stuff like that, right? Then once you do get here, like for example, it takes a lot of documentation and legal representation to move from like I was a student. Then once I finished my degree and graduated, I had like 90 days basically to find a job here,
Okay.
and a job that actually would sponsor my work visa. If not, I had to just leave the country, right? Within those 90 days, you basically have to find a job at a company that is actually willing to sponsor your work visa. And only then you get to stay in this country. If not, bye bye. Then that work visa is also like dependent on like which class and like how you get in. The time period of that keeps changing, and you can keep extending it, and or you could apply for your permanent residency, and that's again a bigger complex pile of crap depending on which country you're born in, not even which country citizen you are, but like which country you're born in. And the processing time of those things can take anywhere from like a year and a half, 2 years to like 40, 50 years just to get
Oh,
your green card.
wow. That's
Yeah,
insane. That's
yeah.
absolutely like my perception of it was like, oh, this, granted, I am fairly cognizant of government bureaucracies and how long things can take. But I'm like, oh, probably the average time is not going to be more than like 2 years for anybody, even in like the most extreme circumstances. And to
Hmm.
hear that it can vary so widely is really, really shocking to me.
Yeah, I think it also it's because like the way USCIS processes this is again like if you have to get green card through your work, there are like
Mhm.
three different categories, right? It's called EB1, EB2, and EB3. So a lot of people fall under EB3, which is basically like if you have a bachelor's degree and if you're a skilled worker. EB2 is basically like you need to have at least a master's degree. And of course, you need to be skilled in like one of these STEM fields or something related to that. EB1 is like you're supposed to be like some sort of a genius, like someone with like a PhD, a scholar, you have published a bunch of papers, or you're at a position at a company where you have like a bunch of people reporting to you, and also you have like people reporting to from like different countries and stuff like that. It all depends on like they're trying to feel you out at like what level you are.
Mhm.
And for example, I have a master's degree, so I'm an EB2. The
Mhm.
last time I checked when I might get my green card back in 2018, like
Mhm.
this is when after I finished all the documentation, everything's approved. It's just a question of like you reach a stage where you it's just a waiting game from there, right?
Yeah.
So it is just because like they're operating at a lag. Right now, I think like they're processing applications that were submitted in 2011 or 12, right? I submitted in
Wow.
2016. Yeah. So
Wow.
the main challenge is they have to get current, right?
Mhm.
If you go by that logic, so for someone who like me who submitted their application in 2016, I don't think it will be actually eligible for consideration going at the pace at which it's going for another 5 or 6 years, right? After then, let's see what happens, kind of a deal. And then each country has its quota, right? So that's where I think the main problem is. Like,
Okay.
for example, a lot of people come from India and China.
Mhm.
So people from India and China, they have a much, much longer waiting periods. Like, for example, if someone like me and someone from Pakistan had applied at the same time, I'm pretty sure that person already has their green card
Okay.
because not a lot of people come from Pakistan, even though it's like it's from the same geographic region and everything. So yeah, that's one thing. And then this is where I think it gets interesting. You could actually buy a green card.
Wait, what? You can buy?
Yeah, you can basically buy a green card for like I don't know if it's for $500,000 or $1 million.
Mhm.
Basically, like you are telling the U.S. government that hey, I'm gonna invest a $500,000 or $1 million in your country, and I'm gonna employ X number of people. I think it's basically like anywhere from like 6 to 15 people. It's basically like you're telling the US government that I'll be positively contributing to the economy, I'll be creating jobs and blah, blah, blah. And here's your $1 million, give me my green card. And then you can actually get that, which
Wow.
is kind of weird, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird.
It's like when rich people donate to a university so that their kid gets into school. It's just like, oh, we'll just jump ahead of everybody else that have been going through the process, working really hard. Which, like, if they have the means to do that and they are going through that, I guess like that would be, huh. I feel like I have been informed of a lot that I just completely did not fully think about. That is so crazy that it would take that long. I imagine with the country dynamic, is it something that it just based on proportionalities? If somebody was
Hmm.
like applying from like Luxembourg, for instance, where it's like
Hmm.
that's the size of like a big city, they might get something even faster because it's just, oh wow, somebody from Luxembourg is applying. Is it more kind of just the number of people that are applying, or is it are there other factors as well?
I think it's a mix of both. Like, so for
Okay.
example, you took the example of Luxembourg, right? So
Mhm.
actually, I had a coworker at my old job. He was from Luxembourg,
Oh
and he was
wow.
able to get this whole visa thing done in like a year and a half or 2 years at the max. So the way it works is, so think of it like this. They have a certain quota of green cards to give under each category every year, right?
Mhm.
So I'm just throwing out a number here. So for example, let's say if the number they set is like, oh, for each country, the number is going to be pretty much the same, right? For example, Luxembourg might have a population of like, I don't know, 5 million people. And they'll say, okay, we're going to give 2,000 green cards to Luxembourg, right? And the same number of green cards will be even allocated to India,
Oh,
to even China,
wow.
even though they have like literally billions of people, right?
That is so
So
nuts.
yeah, it is nuts because like actually, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, they had close to like 100,000 permanent residencies they could have given, but they couldn't because they don't redistribute the slots that are left. That is the
Okay.
weird part. Like if 100,000 slots are available from like all these other countries where people are like, what? We are good in our country. We don't want to come to America and stuff like that. So they don't redistribute those open slots to people from like, let's say India or China. You just have to wait no matter what.
See, that's a huge
Yeah.
oversight in my opinion. That seems just so, it's like leaving it's leaving talent on the table. These
Yep.
are high quality academics and talented people that want to be here. It sounds
Yeah.
yeah, that just wow,
This
that is a
this is
brand new government inefficiency.
this is exactly like these are the kinds of areas where like which to add to this, I think this is going to surprise you. So what's going to happen is like, for example, I'm on an H-1B visa, right? I'm technically not even an immigrant. The
Mhm.
actual official term immigration services uses for me is resident alien. I can't even say I'm an immigrant. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm a
Yeah.
resident alien.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And the thing is, because I'm still waiting on my green card and I have to still continue extending my work visa on the side,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, if something were to happen, like I work in tech, and if this tech company decides to lay off a bunch of people again, right?
Mhm.
And I were to lose my job tomorrow, if I'm not able to find a job in like, let's say, I think between 30 to 60 days at a company that would sponsor my work visa, I'm going home. There's nothing like I cannot file for employment, whatever taxes I've been paying, like for example, Social Security, Medicare. I have to kiss all that goodbye.
That is
Yeah.
yeah,
So this
that
is
is
the piece I
nuts.
think a lot of people don't understand. Like it's like good, but people always like live on this edge and they have this like anxiety thing because you never know, because that's the problem which a lot of people had to go through during 2008 and even during 2020 when they
Right.
had all these like jobs that were lost during the pandemic and all these tech layoffs. People then get creative to extend the whole, then it becomes, how do I just survive, buy time so that I have
Absolutely.
more time to maybe go get a job somewhere. So then that's where you get into some shady areas, and this is where like I guess like the politicians take advantage of like these very they cherry pick the situations, right? Like they conveniently forget what led to that,
Right.
but they pick, okay, this is the reason we need to be doing that. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of like Indian people who've been living in America for like a really long time, surprisingly they like Trump.
Right.
because because he like, of everything he does, he was like, what, I'm going to do this like whole visa thing and the permanent residency thing based on merit. So basically
Right.
that means that you have to accumulate points. Like, let's say if you have a master's degree, you'll get like
Mhm.
X number of points. You've been working here, you get X number of points, blah, blah, blah. And the more points you have, the more like some sort of system that I think they tried to do, but like I don't think it ever,
It didn't get
uh,
implemented fully.
yeah, it never even got to a stage because like he was too busy doing a lot of other crazy shit. So,
Right. Right. Yeah.
so yeah.
You
So
promise somebody a carrot, but then you grow
yeah,
exclusively soybeans.
yeah.
Yeah. Kartik, this has been so informative. I feel like I've learned so much. If people wanted to learn more about you or learn more about this topic, where would you recommend that they go?
I would say if people want to learn more about this topic, I would definitely encourage them to talk to their friends from different countries, be it like whether they are students or your coworkers or like your neighbors. Because like again, if you talk to different people from like different countries, you will get like different perspectives. I would definitely encourage that. If you want to learn more about me, I also do stand-up comedy. So follow me on Instagram at Karthik Lavangu Comic, or you can go to my website, karthiklavangucomic.com. Yeah, and thanks, man, for doing this. And this is a great platform that I was able to share all this information. And I hope people listen to this and process it and realize that not everything is as straightforward as it sometimes looks or as they think it is. This is the reason I feel like people need to be a lot more curious, and they need to educate themselves so that they are better aware of different social and political issues and situations.
Absolutely. I know it's going to spur me to looking into this more. I feel like there's so many assumptions, even more so than I normally have, that it's ripe for me to look into it more. I hope other people do as well. Fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on today, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too, Matt. Thanks so much. I will see you around.
My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining. Before we go today, I want to thank Ryan Lawson, my dear friend and all-around okay guy, for making the theme music for Mattsplaining. And if anyone needs music production or mixing services for any of their projects, Ryan can be reached at beatblenderstudios@gmail.com or at Beat Blender Studios on Instagram and TikTok. And frankly, you should check him out on those apps just for the amazing music-related content. He makes some absolutely beautiful music, and you should definitely check him out. And one final thing before I let you go, I just want to thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you'll join us again next week when we'll have a brand new expert on talking about their area of expertise. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.